For 30 years, I've helped people to optimize their brain to learn anything faster in an age where we're just drowning in information. The faster you can learn, the faster you can earn.
I am so excited today to be here with an absolute legend in the field of the brain.
We know that about 1/3 of our brain's performance potential is predetermined by genetics, but 2/3 is in our control. A lot of my work is going through these 10 keys for a limitless brain that's science-based, that are easy, proven things that people could do for a better, brighter brain.
We're going to get into superfoods that can support you, how to stay sharp as you age, and we're also going to talk about a very interesting thing. Maybe you've heard the quote, "Don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree."
Everybody learns a little bit differently, and after 3 decades as a coach and a speaker and author, I realized that it's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart.
And we're going to get into that today with Jim's new quiz that he released last November that's already had 500,000 people take it. We're going to see how we can optimize your brain today. So get ready for this, because this is going to be a deep dive into brain health, which is potentially the most important thing to focus on in your own personal health. Welcome today, the expert Jim Kwik.
It's so good to be here, Skip. Thank you, everybody who's tuning in.
Talk to me about the idea of this code quiz that you've established with people and the 4 types of brain animals.
So just as people can see this at mybrainanimal.com, it's we're gifting it out to your community. And I feel like, I don't know if you remember this, but if you watch The Matrix, when Neo visits the Oracle for the first time in her kitchen as she's baking cookies, there's a sign above the door, and that sign says, know thyself. And I think a big part of reinventing ourselves is having the curiosity to know yourself and then having the courage to be yourself, right? So you get to know yourself, whether it's through therapy or journaling or meditation. Some people do plant medicine, whatever the means are. But once you get to know who you are, you know, what you stand for, the things that you value most in life, what you believe, being that person is a different part of it also. A lot of people kind of do the introspection, but they don't, like express it, who they are, because of other people's opinions or their expectations or fear of looking bad or people's judgments. So we created a 4-minute assessment. It's called at mybrainanimal.com. And there's a whole chapter in my new book about this. And the idea behind it was, for 30 years, I've helped people to optimize their brain to learn anything faster, to read faster, improve their memory, to focus and concentrate, all the skills that really would serve somebody today, in an age where we're just drowning in information. And I realized that the faster you can learn, the faster you can earn. Knowledge today is not only power, knowledge is profit. But everybody learns a little bit differently. And after 3 decades as a coach and a speaker and author, I realized that it's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart. It's not how smart you are or your kids are, or your team is. It's how are they smart. That everybody has genius. In different ways. And we've found 4 buckets. And so we call it the brain code, CODE, and that stands for the 4 animals, and they all have different traits. And I created this, the inspiration was everything from personality type assessments like Myers-Briggs to left brain, right brain dominance theory, to visual, auditory, kinesthetic learning, to introvert, extrovert, multiple intelligence theory. We drew on a lot of inspiration to create your dominant brain type. And so just the quick of it, quick is
Yeah, that was cute.
the C in code are your cheetahs. And if you're listening to this and you might identify as a cheetah, your primary trait, your dominant trait is action. You thrive in fast-paced environments. You have strong intuition. You adapt very quickly, and so those some of the qualities of a cheetah. The O in code are your owls and their dominant trait. So this is if you're watching this on video, this is this is the cheetah. The O are your owls. Your owls, their dominant trait is logic. So they love data. They love facts and they love figures and formulas. They're extremely logical. They make their decisions logically, even whether they buy something, they want to look at the research, the studies. The D in code are your dolphins, and this is illustration shows, dolphins are very creative. That's their dominant trait. They're great problem solvers. They have strong pattern recognition, and they have a vision for themselves or a story or maybe for their brand that maybe other people can't yet see. They're very creative, strong imagination. And finally, the E in code are your elephants. And your elephant, their dominant trait is empathy. These are people with very strong interpersonal skills. They have high levels of compassion, and they even in their words, you could see they don't use so much I and me, but they use more inclusive words like we and us. These are people that want people to feel seen and want them to feel heard. And so, where does this play out? It plays out pretty much every moment of every day for all of us. And when you understand your brain type, we customize and gift people strategies based on how their based on their strengths, their cognitive strengths. I realize that not everything works for everybody. You know, as we teach speed reading or remembering languages or giving a speech without notes, remembering names and faces. So we customize just like in the future, we're talking about personalized learning. So everyone learns a little different. So as an example, uh, our team took this assessment and it's interesting. 100% of our customer service team identified as elephant because they're highly compassionate. They have strong empathy. They want our community to feel seen, feel heard, acknowledged. They're our community builders. My CFO and our financial officer is a very strong owl. It loves the numbers, right? My business partner, who you know, Alexis, our CEO, is the dolphin, creative visionary, has a vision, to building better, brighter brains, right? 1 billion brains. And so it's interesting. You even see this in pop culture. Take, I don't know, a show like Friends. If you look at a Ross Geller, who's a professor, a scientist, he's your owl. If you look at Phoebe, the musician artist, she's your creative dolphin. If you look at someone like Joey, who just acts, doesn't think, is the cheetah, right? Just kind of moves. And you look at someone like Monica, who wants to host everything at her apartment. She's the elephant, right? She's the community builder. So we see it everywhere. And the benefit of understanding your brain type is it's kind of like if you're right-handed, it doesn't mean you don't use your left hand. It just that's where your strength is. That's where you're most comfortable. That's where you get the best results. And sometimes when people are trying to learn something, they're trying to learn it with the opposite hand. So if you were to write your first and last name with your dominant hand and switch and do your opposite hand, that second time it's going to take longer. It's going to feel a little uncomfortable. The quality is not going to be quite as good. And that's often as when people are trying to learn something, sometimes it takes longer or it's more difficult or the end result is not quite as good, because they're not enjoying it or efficient at it. But once you understand people's brain type, we give people strategies, follow up with how to sell to them, how to teach them, how to parent based on brain types. So yeah, there's a whole chapter of it in the book that goes in a lot of detail. I made it free for your listeners at mybrainanimal.com. And, if people want to post their animal, you get some interesting art. You could post it, tag the team, tag Marissa, tag myself, so we get to see like this community, what's their driving brain type. I'll repost some of it. We'll gift out a few copies of Limitless as a gift, just as a thank you.
That's incredible. If we just touch on a high line right now, let's say there's people in the crowd who are like, yeah, I'm definitely the cheetah. I just run into things and, I think afterwards, but I'm just kind of doing. And that's what I feel like my base mode. And what I loved what you said there is for people to recognize that they might primarily be one. And of course, they have aspects of the others, but there's going to be a dominant one, like your right hand dominant versus left hand dominant. And of course, you can also, and I'm sure as we get deeper into your brand, train the different modalities and train the different skills so that you could become ambidextrous between these different animals. But if someone recognizes right now, they're like, I'm definitely that cheetah type, what is one habit or one core thing that you think that they could be doing right now to elevate their natural advantage in life with their brain?
So cheetahs, as you identify this, it's even communication styles. So, that's so very important to be able to connect with other individuals. So just identifying your own brain type. It's kind of like love languages. many of your people in your community are familiar with love languages. That's how you prefer to receive love, and the way we receive it is usually the way we give it also as well. So cheetahs are easily identifiable even with communication because cheetahs tend to get straight to the point. Their speech is very more concise. They don't beat around the bush because it wastes, time. Owls are more speak more logically, more details. They often communicate in very more logical sequence, presenting facts and figures and data. Dolphins, and I'll give you a couple strategies for this. Dolphins, um, they speak about the bigger picture. They talk about future plans. They talk about innovative idea. There's a lot of passion behind their vision, and elephants are keen on really understanding and validating the feelings and perspectives of others. They're very more patient and they're very conscientious. And so understanding that, what does that allow you to do? It allows you to communicate a whole lot better. Certainly, if you're communicating with these individuals and the person listening is a cheetah, it helps for you to kind of get in that mode and speak their language, if you will, getting straight to the point, being concise. If you're selling to them also, like if you're a cheetah salesperson, and we all are always wearing some kind of business development hat, even if you work for a company, they're your top client. Um, you're naturally very agile. You're swift to adapt to the pace of your client. You could harness this power. But if you're selling to a cheetah, also they appreciate. Remember, like they appreciate directness. Value efficiency. Skip the small talk. Present the key benefits. Demonstrate your product or service and how it provides immediate results. If you're selling more to an owl, they respect evidence, right? They appreciate well-researched presentations, statistics, case studies. If you're speaking to a dolphin, it's interesting. Like you speak to their vision of their life, show them how your offering fits into the large picture, how it could pave a way to getting them, what they want. If you're selling to an elephant, while the facts and the case studies and all that and the vision is important, the relationship is paramount for an elephant. So, right, that the trust, spending time to understand their needs, demonstrating that you genuinely care about their success, making them feel seen and feel heard. And this goes into parenting also. If your children take this assessment, and it could change over time, like your primary animal because of your values, because of life conditions also as well. But there's so many different ways of because I think self-awareness really is a superpower. People use this model not only for learning more rapidly, but even for hiring, right? Cheetahs, like if you're managing a cheetah, they're great at delegating tasks and getting clear, as long as they have clear expectations, a clear goal to race to. If you're hiring or managing an owl, they appreciate candidates, who have strong analytical skills. And so managing them, you could provide a structured, more predictable work environment. Maybe they might, well, there's a drawback for every single animal. Maybe they overanalyze or get too rigid in their processes. If you're managing a dolphin, inspire and motivate their teams through your enthusiasm, and building that, story arc, in terms of their vision. If you're managing elephants, they excel in supportive, collaborative work environments. As you can imagine, they're great at resolving conflicts and ensuring everyone feels heard. And so, yeah, there's so many different things. Like even for, let's say, going back to your question, a cheetah, let's take like how they perform, right? They love short bursts of focus. So a technique like the something we teach, the Pomodoro technique, where you focus for an intense, short period. Because after about 25, 30 minutes, most people's focus goes down, or they lose a little bit of energy and momentum. So taking little brain breaks, maybe cheetahs would benefit from during their brain break doing some physical activity to incorporate some physical movement during their focus session to keep their energy, and their mind clear. An owl, though, would be different. An owl would benefit in terms of if you're an owl, you could break down tasks. because you're very detail oriented. Breaking down tasks into smaller, manageable parts can help maintain your focus, right? You could schedule deep working sessions around your chronotype in terms of when you are, have the most level of energy. If you're a dolphin, to help you focus, you could do something like we teach in the book called mind mapping, which is a kind of, you start a task, you can visually map what you're doing, or you could take creative breaks, incorporate short creative activities, maybe juggling or whatever, to be able to prevent burnout. And if you're an elephant, think about work environments, and productivity is based on your team. Based around collaborative work sessions. You draw energy from social interactions, and you can have these kind of structured routines. Or elephants benefit from some kind of mindfulness practice. With meditation, yoga could help elephants be able to center their thoughts and their emotions, which can enhance their ability to concentrate. But even when we teach reading, a lot of cheetahs like to skim and scan because they want to get through it more quickly, as opposed to an owl looking for the details, right? Or an elephant trying to see it from the author's point of view, seeing different perspectives, right? Or a dolphin, when they're reading, turning what they're reading into pictures, right? To be able to visualize, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we customize their learning, whether it's remembering names or languages or focus sessions, around brain types, because it's kind of like if sometimes you're trying to learn something, their brain animal, maybe from the person you're listening to, is different than your brain animal. Your style, their style of teaching is different than your style of learning. And it's like two ships in the night. You pass each other, and there's no connection, right? You don't even realize sometimes the other one register, the other person is really there. And so the nature of my work is that we are all have this incredible genius inside of us, right? We're born with this incredible gift between our ears called our brain. Challenges, our brain doesn't come with an owner's manual. It's not very user friendly. So that's why I wrote Limitless, to be able to show people how their brain works so they can work their brain.
So talk to me about what you've discovered personally, because I just want to see like a very, and I'm sure this can go really in depth, but just at a high level, how you think about optimizing your own brain animal, and what's the ideal amount of time, at least for you, that you spend optimizing your primary or your dominant side versus those other categories. So how much are you optimizing your day-to-day life for your primary versus the others?
I mean, I do things that for me, I'm a strong owl, and my secondary is elephant. I think because I grew up with learning difficulties. When people have seen us, at the events you and I spend time at, or if I'm speaking, if there's time, I do these demonstrations where we'll pass around a microphone and people introduce themselves, and I'll memorize 50 or 60, 70 people's names, right? Depending on what there's time for. But I always tell people, I don't do this to impress you. I do this to express to you what's possible, because the truth is, every single person listening to this, you could do this too. Regardless of your age, your background, your career, education level, your diet, your financial situation, your gender, history, IQ. We could all do this. We just weren't taught, right? School teaches you what to learn: math, history, science, Spanish, but there are zero classes, very little amount of classes on how to learn, right? There's no class called focus and concentration. There's no class called memory, right? And, pointing to someone, say, focus or study or, learn this or memorize this. It's like going to somebody saying, play the ukulele or play the didgeridoo, who's never had any classes or training, on these subjects. So understanding your brain type is a good starting point. And then you have to take care of the hardware also as well. This is something I'm very conscious of. I'm in my 50s, right? And I lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's. So I had a head injury when I was 5, a traumatic brain injury. I had learning difficulties. I would have these migraines every day when I was 5, 6. I had balance issues. Took me 3 years longer to learn how to read. One day I was being teased because I just wasn't in class understanding a lesson, and teacher came to my defense, pointed to me and said, "Leave that kid alone. That's the boy with the broken brain." Right. So that label became my limit. So I became obsessed with our brain and really understanding how to really unleash these kind of gifts for everybody. That being said, the brain type gives you some strategies, but you also have to take care of the hardware itself, right? Because even as we age, some things, there are changes, right? That happen, as we grow older, certain things slow down, and it doesn't mean that you have, brain aging challenges, because, like certain things is normal, but your processing speed can decline, your working memory might not be as efficient. You might have difficulty encoding new information or retrieving it in a more long-term memory. And so the things that we teach in our work is not just the software of how to read faster, improve your memory, focus, and so on, but it's also the hardware. How do you optimize? You were talking about brain health. Like, what are the levers that give you your best, brightest brain that anybody at any age or stage could be able to access? And that's really the focus for me. Limitless is highly endorsed by the Cleveland Clinic Center for Brain Health, by the top Alzheimer's researcher out of Harvard University. And when I speak at these institutions, we know that about 1/3 of our brain's performance potential is predetermined by genetics, but 2/3 is in our control. We have influence over those things. And so, a lot of my work is going through I call them the 10 keys for a limitless brain, that all of us could, that's science-based, that are easy, proven things that people could do, that could give people, some amazing results.
So I've got four categories I want to ask you about in this next 25 minutes that we have together. As regards to the hardware, which there's probably some software involvement here, exercise, nutrition, sunlight, emotions, and even maybe spirituality. And maybe we start in that order. Exercise, I know there's going to be some pretty like standard answers, but I'd be curious to hear the macro perspective on that. And then nutrition, just give me like the powerhouse things of that. And then I'd really like to dig into emotions and the hardware of brain health and what you've been exploring with and seeing work for that. And then the spirituality side of that as well. And if sunlight, hydration, if any of that, those other core things would be nice.
Yeah, let's unpack that, and we can do it rapid fire. So I use the acronym MEDS-RX, which will be inclusive of everything that you said. It's an acronym, and it's not pharmaceutical. The M is meditation, the E is exercise, the D is diet, the S is sleep, the R is relationships, which is so very important, for your brain health. And having a positive peer group. It's not just our neurological networks, it's our social networks, and that's the R. And the X are the extras, right? Which can include cold plunging, it include red light, it can include, a lot of other things also as well. And so, yeah, I mean, for me, I just want to incorporate all those things in my life. The meditation is my time. I mean, I like to think that our spirit is always in play, right? That we are spiritual beings having this human experience. Part of what grounds me in that is nature. Part of what grounds me in that is my quiet time, so I could kind of connect to life and the universe. I have to meditate twice a day. It's just kind of my go-to. And some people say I'm so busy, I don't have 20 minutes to be quiet. If you're that busy, you probably should be meditating an hour or more, honestly.
Spoken like a true owl.
Yes, because the thing is that your brain is not meant to go 100, like miles an hour all the time. You need little brain breaks, little pit stops, if you will. You have to disconnect to reconnect, and we know all the benefits that come from it. It helps you to learn better, helps you to reduce your stress. Chronic stress will shrink the human brain, puts you in fight or flight, which puts you in a survival brain. It keeps you hostage. It doesn't give you easy access to your executive function, your creativity, your problem-solving abilities, and so much more. So I have to do that in the morning and later in the afternoon, especially when I feel like a little bit of dip, usually between 2 and 4 p.m. That's usually my place where I just have to just 15 minutes and I go through my process. The exercise so very important, and I don't just mean doing CrossFit 3 times a week or Pilates, a few times a week. I mean moving. The primary reason we have a brain is to control our movement. And as your body moves, your brain grooves. As your body moves, your brain grooves. When you move and exercise, you create something called brain-derived neurotropic factors, short for BDNF. And this is like fertilizer for neuroplasticity. It's like fertilizer for your brain to be able to grow and make new connections. Also, when you do exercise, you stimulate dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. These neurotransmitters that are very essential for cognitive health and cognitive performance. Generally, even aerobic exercise, what's going to be good for your heart is probably going to be good for your head, right? You think about doing exercise, get more blood flow, more oxygen to your brain also as well. So they say sitting is the new smoking. So we're behind screens. I don't know about you, but I find myself behind screens all the time. Every hour, just taking 5 minutes to get some fresh air, do some burpees, some calisthenics, hydrate. You see me drinking throughout because on our podcast, we've done about 400 episodes. We had one neuroscientist nutritionist saying that if you're just 2% dehydrated, it's going to affect your cognitive health and performance. And while staying hydrated will actually boost your reaction time, your thinking speed upwards of 30%. So, like when I take my brain break, I do three things: I move, I hydrate, and I breathe. Because a lot of times people feel fatigued when they're reading or studying or on a computer because their posture, like, and when you collapse your diaphragm, the lower one third of your lungs absorbs two-thirds of the oxygen. So some people are just oxygen deprived. So maybe using this opportunity to be able to do alpha breathing, box breathing, Wim Hof breathing, whatever, to be able to kind of reset your nervous system, get more energy. So exercise is very important, and moving throughout the day, not just doing your workout at the gym. The D is diet, so we could talk about nutrition. There's a whole chapter on brain foods. There's a whole chapter on a new category called neuronutrition. We know your body is only 2% of your body mass, but your brain is only 2% of your body mass, but requires 20% of the nutrients. Some of those nutrients are a little different than the rest of your body. Some of my favorite brain foods, avocados, the monounsaturated fat. Your brain's mostly fat, right? Blueberries, berries in general are very neuroprotective. I like to call them brain berries. Broccoli, the sulforaphane in broccoli is very good for your brain cognitive health and performance. And if you sprout the broccoli, it actually even magnifies the level of sulforaphane. Olive oil is good for your brain. If your diet allows eggs, the choline in eggs is a precursor, critical component of acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that supports memory and cognitive function. Green leafy vegetables, kale and spinach. Your omega-3s, very important. If your diet allows um, salmon, sardines, flax seeds, and if you don't get this, then I prefer people get their nutrition through foods, but maybe they need to supplement it. They're not getting, another thing that's good, eggs, if your diet allows. I mentioned choline, but you might need to supplement with choline. If you're not eating the fish or the flax seeds, maybe you need to supplement with DHA, your omega-3s. And this is something that's easy testable. You go to your functional medicine doctor and do a nutrient profile because, again, you can learn all the strategies that we teach on reading faster and recalling things better. But if you're lacking your B vitamins, B6, B9, B12, these are vital for brain health, right? This is the hardware. Magnesium is essential for brain health. You need magnesium for almost all your physiological functions, that you have. Turmeric. Well, it's a wonderful brain food. The active ingredient, curcumin, is very anti-inflammatory. But again, if you're not having turmeric in your diet, maybe you supplement with curcumin, right? And then there's this category that we talk about called nootropics or nootropics, and where the brain nutrition is based on, improving your cognitive health and well-being. Nootropics based on cognitive performance, and so there are human studies, ingredients that have been shown to improve executive functioning, memory, creativity, energy, motivation, things like ashwagandha. We've heard, many people have heard of it. It's an adaptogenic herb. It helps with mental and physical resilience, may reduce stress. Something I'm very excited about in the nootropic space is whole coffee fruit extract. This is the whole fruit from the coffee plant. It's usually a byproduct that's usually discarded, but it's a very strong antioxidant. Doesn't have caffeine, has a positive impact on cognitive function. Another nootropic that's going to go to is phosphatidylserine. which is a phospholipid. So it's an integral part of your brain's cell membrane, improves memory, learning, cognitive function. L-theanine is an amino acid usually found in green tea. It's a very popular nootropic. It promotes relaxation without the drowsiness, which can enhance your brain function. Another favorite one is something that workout enthusiasts have used for years. It's one of the most studied ingredients research, but it has huge cognitive benefits, is creatine. This is a substance that's naturally produced by our bodies. It's predominantly found in meat and fish, but it plays a crucial role in energy metabolism. So there's so many studies that have shown that creatine supplementation can improve cognitive function, especially helping your short-term memory. It's been shown to help stave off some of the adverse effects from a bad night of sleep also as well. But yeah, we put over 30 different ingredients along with their human studies. People could see my top recommendations at brainnutrition.com. There's something to buy, but it's just, I list them out with the spelling in case you're taking notes. And I also link to all the studies, human studies, not animal studies that have been shown. So again, what you eat matters, especially for your gray matter. And so this is nutrition for your cognitive health and nootropics for your cognitive performance. So that's the diet, and then the last one in this was Meds RX. So we talked about meditation, exercise. D is diet. The S is sleep. Um, how does your brain perform when you get a bad night's sleep? And just three things I want to highlight. Why underscore. You I mean, if you have long-term memory issues, check your sleep. Do a sleep study. Nowadays, it's so easy. You could do it at home. Your doctor could send you a home study, kit, sleep kit, detect for like sleep apnea or other things that could be challenging your sleep. But when you sleep, you consolidate short to long-term memory. When you sleep, you also clean out the sewage system kicks on in your brain. You clean out the beta amyloid plaque that could lead to brain aging challenges like dementia. And also, it's where you dream. People don't realize, but so many things in culture came from dream states. Like Mary Shelley created Frankenstein in her dream. Paul McCartney created the song Yesterday in his dream. A chemist created the framework of the periodic table in a dream. And so your brain doesn't shut off at night. If anyways, more active, integrating and developing, creating what you spent the day learning, involved in studying. So we have a whole process. You could search online, my name, how to remember dreams, and different steps on how to recall those dreams. A lot of people forget it. So that's your sleep. One of my favorite couple of sleep things. Direct sunlight first thing in the morning, so very important. You remember your eyes are only part of your brain that's outside of your skull. And when you get direct sunlight, not through a window pane, like a window will block out and filter out some of the spectrum of light. But even if it's hazy or foggy outside, you'll still get the benefits and it helps to reset your circadian rhythm. So you sleep better that night. So 10 minutes of sunlight first thing in the morning when you wake up will help you to do that. Another thing, everybody has an alarm most of the time to wake up. I highly recommend trying this next week, have an alarm to go to bed because your brain loves a structure and a schedule, even on the weekends. And nobody does it perfectly, obviously, but to the degree you could stay on a routine, you're going to sleep better. And then remember, as hunter-gatherers, we would know it'd be time to sleep because the environment would tell us there would be a decrease in two, environmental elements. It would get darker and it would get cooler. And so to the degree we could sleep in a room that's dark, and that means, probably the biggest culprit is our screens, right? The blue light from our phones, our tablets or whatever, or televisions could fool your mind into thinking it's still daylight. But, when it's darker, that's a trigger for melatonin, which is your hormone to help you to relax. Also cooler. Now where it's so cold, you're shivering because that'll keep you awake. But, even if you take a warm bath or warm shower or a sauna before you go to bed, when you leave that shower, your core body temperature will drop, and that's a signal to create melatonin also as well. And if you take a bath, it's wonderful. You could use Epsom salt. The magnesium you'll absorb, which will help you relax transdermally, also as well. But yeah, sleep is so very important. So that's the meds, and the RX is the R's of relationships. is the friendships that you have. We had on our podcast, a gentleman who talked about out of Harvard that talked about the largest study on happiness and longevity, and it wasn't diet or exercise, it was your social connections. It's so very important. I mean, you think about it as again as a hunter-gatherer, it takes a village, for you to be able to feel safe. And we all need somebody to confide in, to encourage us, to cheerlead for us, to teach us, to be kind to us, to push us, and who we spend time with is who we become. Right. And the science behind it is we have these mirror neurons where we're constantly imitating and modeling the people consciously and unconsciously that we're around. Right. That's why they say we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. That if you're around 9 broke people, be careful because you're going to be number 10. Because we model and imitate these mirror neurons, literally a mirror that reflects you, we start reflecting certain traits and attributes of people we spend time with. And I always tell people watch, which is another acronym. We try to imitate the W in watch as words. We use the same language as people around us, same slang, the same predominant words. The A, our actions, we tend to have the same behaviors as people around us. Like if everyone around us was eating well and exercising and meditating, we're more likely to do it ourselves, right? The T are our thoughts. We tend to have the same thinking as the people around us. We start thinking the same way as the people we spend the most time with. The C is our character. We tend to have the same standards or the moral compass as the people around us. Um, Integrity as the people around us. And then finally, the HR habits. I always, first you create your habits, then your habits create you. As everyone's listening to this summit, you get introduced to different routines, and you create your habits of meditation or exercise or eating the best brain foods or whatever. And those habits are reading, and those habits create you back. And so it's not just our neurological networks, it's our social networks, right? Whether you smoke or not has less to do with your biology and more to do your friends smoke? Um, and so those are the relationships. And then finally, the X are all the extras that, you could add to that, all the biohacking and, all the other things, the red light, the hyperbaric chambers, and the cold therapy, all those other stuff. But I would put that last because I think the foundation is the stuff that comes before that.
When you started out this MedsRx approach, it was really interesting where the first one was meditation. And honestly, I was shocked when that was the very first one, and I love it. And I want to go back to that and say, using the 4 animal types, you is so clear throughout this whole interview. Now that you prefaced and set the frame of the types, that owl is like, you are so owl, it's so intense. For the different animals, the cheetah, owl, dolphin, and elephant, would there be a different sort of baseline? And also, let me back up for a minute. Meditation to you, what is meditation to you? If we look at a macro, assuming that I'm going to ask the question for a cheetah, what is a good type of meditation that's going to be easier for them? And then for the other 3 types, what would be the same?
It's interesting, and we're getting more and more just because we're getting collecting a lot of data, from people going through the assessment, and we're doing a lot of follow up more and more. For me, meditation is all right. So I don't do it to become more enlightened. My purpose in meditation is really to control my nervous system, to be able to self-regulate, to be able to have more influence on my focus. So invariably, when my mind goes somewhere else and I pull it back to a mantra or I pull it back to my breath, it's like an exercise in focus, meaning that, invariably when I'm sitting and everybody has a different style of meditating. For me, if I'm lying down or I'm sitting and my thoughts go to the client or to dry cleaning or wherever invariably will go, right? We can't shut off our mind, right? You've heard this idea that you can't your heart beats, that's what it does, you can't stop it, right? Your mind thinks, that's what it does, but the idea here is your mind goes somewhere else and you pull it back to something, a candle or an image or a mantra or your breath, which is my kind of go-to, is that it helps you to exercise your focus. So like when you're later on in a meeting or you're with your kids and you find your mind, or you're about to go on a Zoom important interview, whatever, and your mind goes somewhere, you've exercised it and you can pull it back to the present, right? To the here, to the now. So I've been doing meditation since my teens. I grew up doing martial arts, and it's just kind of part of what I did to be able to kind of recover, and have balance and discipline. And it's kind of, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage if I don't do it. For me, it's not a big to do. I don't necessarily put on, um, essential oils and put on incense or anything else. I just need a quiet space to close my eyes and just be with myself. And I feel like the universe just opens up, because of it. And yeah, and also helps me recover. Some people suggest that 20 minutes of meditation could equal, X amount of hours of sleep. I don't know if I necessarily buy that, but I definitely feel the difference when I don't get that time in. Also as well, do you have a practice yourself? Is this something part of your regular?
Reflecting on what you've been saying throughout the whole interview, I was also thinking that each animal type probably has a different core motivation that would actually inspire them to do some form of mindfulness. So, like for cheetahs, maybe sitting down in a quiet state with their eyes closed is going to help them think faster and thought experiment through lots of ideas. And for someone like you who's got this very owl demeanor, it's going to allow you to center so that you can process things better and like you said, relax your nervous system, which were the motivations for those. And then the dolphins, it's to sit in that creativity for themselves and explore new ideas and stop thinking about the day to day. And then maybe for the elephants, it's to come back to who they are and stop thinking about everybody else for a few minutes.
It gives you a nice reprieve. I mean, I see this even in patterns and nothing, again, like a model, which this code is for people. This idea that the menu is not the meal, right? The map is not the territory. The idea here is a guidepost for people to kind of recognize, and it takes the judgment out. When you know what the brain types of the people are around you, you understand their behaviors, right? You understand how they find roles and responsibilities for their around their strengths. You even see how, like, let's take exercise, right? Like for the most part, I've noticed this trend where cheetahs, because they're fast-paced decision makers, right? They tend to prefer high intensity exercise, fast-paced physical activities that align with their energetic goal oriented nature, activities like sprinting or high intensity interval training, or maybe even competitive sports that have physicality, around them. An owl, though, would more lean into, and is a generality, things that are more contemplative, more precision, things like yoga and Pilates activities, that even exercise some of their mental muscles, like chess, the strategic thinking, the patience that come from that also as well. I mean, you take a dolphin, and their movement would be, they would enjoy activities that allow them to lean into their creativity, or expression, such as dance, right? Some kind of aerobics or swimming. They might prefer, group classes. Definitely elephants love group classes, right? But they're having fun and they get to tap into more passion like others. And elephants would be, they would love those team sports, those group fitness classes, maybe hiking with friends. It'd be very fulfilling to them. Maybe they're doing a charity run, because there's also that community, benefit also as well. But because they have highly compassionate, nurturing relationship with their body, they can focus on more holistic health and well-being. They might be more inclined to engage in activities that promote balance and wellness and a sense of harmony.
And I know that this last question I'm going to ask you might be a little rigged, and there may not be a yes or no or black and white answer. But when it comes to emotions and how they affect our brain health, have you discovered or developed any best practices for that in your time?
So emotions are really key in so many different areas. I have this idea where it's H cubed, things go from your head and your heart to your hands, that you could have goals, and we all do, right? Everyone listening has goals that they have in their head, but if they're not acting consistently with their hands, check in with the second H, which is your heart, right? Which is the symbol of emotions, because we are not logical, but we are certainly we're biological. When I talk about dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, we're this chemical feeling soup. And the key to a long-term memory is information by itself is very forgettable, but information tied with emotion becomes unforgettable. I would imagine a lot of people here, that they could hear a few notes of a song that could take them back to when they were a teenager. Because it's that emotional impetus, right? Or a fragrance or a food could take you back to when you're a child. And so emotions play a huge role. You have three parts. You have a triune brain, right? You have a neocortex. You have this reptilian brain, and in the middle you have this middle brain. And this middle brain, some of the components of your this organ, you have something that looks like a seahorse called your hippocampus, which is the primary function is memory, and attached to it is this like almond part of your brain that is your amygdala, and your amygdala is like the switching stations for emotions. And it's interesting that your memory and your emotions are tied literally in your brain, and it's no wonder we remember things that touch us emotionally, good or bad. And I would say that think about the emotion we primarily felt sitting in class. Most people felt bored. And on a scale of 0 to 10, boredom's a zero. And if it's information times emotion becomes a long-term memory, if your emotion is boredom or zero, anything times zero is zero. So we wonder why we forgot most of the stuff the periodic table and everything else we learned back in school. So I think emotional regulation is really key because I always tell people that all learning is state dependent. At the events that I lead and speak at, we always do these interactive activities where we get the emotional state up because that primes us to learn better also as well because it makes us more alert. I mean, you think about children, playing that sense of fun and playfulness helps them to learn better, to be able to tap into more of their creativity and their mind's potential. So all learning is state dependent. And so what I would always say is like control how we feel. Like you have a to-do list. What if you had a to feel list? Like, what do you want to feel today? What are three emotions that you want to cultivate? Because you don't have emotions, you do them. A big part of like I would think what this summit is about when you're reinventing yourself, it's about transcending, ending trance, ending this mass hypnosis through marketing or media that were broken, that were somehow limited, or self-hypnosis, right? Saying like, people come to me at events all the time when say, no, I'm a memory coach and say, Jim, I'm just not that smart. I have a horrible memory. I'm just getting too old. And I always say, stop. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If you fight for your limits, they're yours, right? And so part of tapping into more emotions is you don't have emotions, you do them. Just like you don't have focus, there's a process for focusing. And the principle I'm talking about is taking the nouns in your life and turning them into verbs. So you don't have focus, which is a noun, you do it. It's a verb. There's a process for focusing. You don't have a memory even. There's a process for remembering something. You encode it, you store it, you retrieve it, right? You don't even have motivation. There's a process for motivating yourself, right? And there you don't even have energy. That and people are listening. That's the problem. I have no motivation, no energy. But you don't have energy. You generate energy. There's a process of eating the right foods and moving your body and optimize your sleep, managing your stress, being around vibrant individuals, your positive peer group, and so much more. But there's a process, and self-hypnosis. We could fool ourselves into saying, I'm not this or I am this, right? And these aren't things you are, these are things you could do. And what does it do? It gives you your agency back because everybody here, if you're listening to it, you're a thermostat, you're not a thermometer, right? A thermometer, what does it do? It just the only function, it reacts to the environment. But a thermostat doesn't do that. A thermostat could gauge, it knows the temperature, it gauges the environment. But what does it do? It sets a temperature and what happens to the environment. The environment reacts to you, right? And we set a temperature, we set goals, we set a vision for our life, and we take that invisible and we make it more visible. And that's the power of manifesting, right? Where we take something that's inside our mind and we make it, in our part of our external reality. But just like what I'm saying is like you could have your to-do list, but if you have a to-feel list, like often like people when they're having a spirit debate with a loved one, they like, oh, what do I need to say? What do I need to do? Right? And what if you just take a step back and say, like, who do I want to be? What do I want to feel? Like maybe I want to be compassionate. And then the behaviors and the words take care of themselves, right? And so I think it's important, to wake up and before you go look at your to-do list, look at your to-be list, look at your to-feel list, look at your to-learn list. There's just so many different aspects to ourselves that sometimes we don't shine a light on, and that's why I think like a summit like this is so very important because it's bringing up conversation. So it's in your more top of mind and, top of heart also as well.
Well, I tell you what, I'm feeling real inspired right now, Jim. Thank you so much for coming on here. When people fall in love with you after listening to this, where do they go? What do they do to get more of you?
So, I listed a couple of sites, mybrainanimal.com. You can take the free assessment to your community and then text it to your friends and your family because it'll be very enlightening to know your family and your friends, your teammates, because it explain a lot of their behavior. Again, brain nutrition, you could get my guide there of my human studies, research that could help you with your cognitive performance. And then on the book is found everywhere. The book came out in 2020. The first couple of years did over 1 million copies. We donated all the proceeds to charity. So thank you anyone who purchased Limitless. We built schools, fully funded them in Ghana, Guatemala, Kenya. Also, Alzheimer's research for women. Women are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men. And, in memory of my grandmother, most of the research is done on men, though. Most of the treatments on men. And so, we fund that also as well. So you can find that at limitlessbook.com and on social media. I would challenge everybody to do one thing because I feel like it's a lie that knowledge is power. It has the potential to be a lot of power if we act on it. And so a small action everybody could take right now is maybe take a screen capture of where they're consuming this right now and post it, tag Skip, tag Marissa, tag myself, and so we get to see it. And share one thing you're going to do for a better, brighter brain. What's like we talked about a lot of things. We talked about meditation. We talked about little things you could do for your sleep, some of the best, brain foods, and so on. What's one thing you're going to do? Because then when you post it, you share it with your fans, your followers, your family, your friends. And I think one of the best ways of learning something is to teach it. We take advantage of something in science called the explanation effect. When you learn something with the intention of explaining it to somebody else, you're going to learn it a lot better. And if you tag us in it, I'll get to see it and I'll repost some of my favorites. And again, we'll gift out a handful of copies of Limitless to your community just as a thank you for just having me as part of the summit.
Absolutely incredible, Jim. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and that amazing knowledge drop you just did. So, hope to see you soon.